All right, well, let's have a little bit of fun today. So I'm going to share my screen with all of you, and we'll get this party started. Okay. So I'm going to give a little bit of an intro and then hand this over to my wonderful colleague, Christina Blake, who will kind of get through most of the meat of the day and helping you to take advantage of the things that we've been doing for the last 6 months or so. We want more people to learn about this stuff. We figured it's best to just share it freely. You know how we get down. So first thing I'm going to talk about is how did we get here? I think, and I want to start off talking about this because it's important to understand the kind of problems that we were running into that led us to being like, wait, maybe there's a better way. So I personally decided that after 15 years of being like a hardcore, SEO guy, that I was going to start to learn more about paid. And I went out and got my AdWords certification. And in starting to understand all the data that people that work in paid have, I was just floored by the things that I was guessing on, where PPC folks had all that data. And then as I started pulling all that data down, I started realizing, oh crap, Excel is not the right tool when you're bringing down hundreds of thousands of words. Things got really slow, they didn't scale. And then as I was trying to get adoption within our organization, I was saying like, copy this Excel formula and paste it here and then pivot this. And I was watching team members have to spend so much time trying to just clean the data and get it into a good place that I was basically like, I don't think this is the right approach. And we saw that the poor adoption led to inconsistency. And I've always said that Seer needs to be like Starbucks. Our clients oftentimes are on their second or third company, and they brought us in the second or third time, and we want them to have as consistent of an experience as possible. So by looking at data in a way that was almost agnostic to the account team, we were able to make sure that we were more consistent in how we showed clients opportunity. And ultimately, like I say here at the bottom, I think our clients just deserved better. It's like one person that could do a lot of tricks in Excel was able to find certain things that someone else wasn't. And I was like, you know what, our clients deserve more consistency than that. So I started taking like a little bit of a mental poll around our company. And I'm telling you, if you are an agency, you know this is true, just admit it. And if you're a client, I'm telling you this is happening, because I saw it in my own company where I would sit in a room and I'd see it two different teams, SEO, PPC, or whatever, and you would almost see like when the SEO team's turn was to present to the client, SEO people were looking at the slides and they were answering questions and they were ready to answer. PPC folks were like, well, this isn't really my part, so I'm going to just kind of lay low. And you're like, well, wait a second, customers are typing in words on Google and you can barely tell the difference between what's the ad, not the ad anymore. So they're clicking on all these things. Isn't there some way we could learn from each other? And the truth is, these teams don't communicate. They don't. I don't care if they're both in the same company like they were at Seer. If it's two different agencies, they just rarely communicate about their data. So I decided to become the integrated team myself. So I was like, I am now the integrated team. Me, personally, Will Reynolds, I am the integrated team. I am taking SEO and PPC data, and I'm starting to show clients things that they hadn't seen before. The first client that I had kind of piece this data together for, I said to them, I said, holy smokes, when I looked at the long tail of all the words that you're bidding on, 25% of your search terms, sorry, not keywords, 25% of your spend is on search terms that only got one click all year. And then when I said that to the client, it's like, how do you manage that? How do you group these things together so you can find out that 25% of your millions of dollars is being spent on search terms that only got one search all year? And the client's like, holy crap, like we don't mind that very well. And it's like, yeah, most people cut their analysis at, oh, well, we looked at 10, anything that's got 10 clicks or more. Well, you would have missed out on, for this client, about 45% of their spend. Another client we saw was in the banking sector, and they spent about $60,000 in 3 months on words that included 21 Savage. And it was because a rapper dropped an album called Bank Account. And all these banks were bidding on words related to bank account, not realizing that people were looking for something totally different. And how did I know that? Because for all of a sudden, after the song came out, the rich snippet, which is an organic data point, popped into the first position. And we said, well, this whole word has changed meaning somehow. And how are we going to know that? And what are we going to do about it? But if you're not bringing that SEO data next to that paid data, the paid folks would not have known that that was happening on this account. So then I started seeing client quotes. Clients were saying things back to me as we were piecing this data together. And when you start seeing this kind of reaction, I said, we're on to something here. I said, we're on to something big. And it was like magic. It's one of my most favorite things to do these days is sit with a client and show them how we brought their data together and show them simple things that were under all of our noses all this time that we were never able to see before. So since we're on to something big, and I'm giving you a little bit of the history on how we got here and the kind of problems we were running into and the value, I think it'd be a great time for Christina Blake to get cracking and start to show you exactly how to create this magic for your own accounts and your own clients. So Christina, I'm gonna stop my share and you can take it away from here.
Cool, thanks, Will. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. Can everyone see everything all right? Good. So this is what I want to get into today. Do any of you ever feel like your agencies or your team members are giving you too many recommendations? Maybe you don't know which ones to prioritize. Or maybe you just don't know which ones have the greatest potential for ROI, and this would be a really great way for you to prioritize. So Will was just talking about this. This happens to us too. But this is why we're working so hard to integrate data strategy to all of our teams at Seer. We want to make sure that all of our Seer team members are learning how to combine paid and organic data so that we can change this, so that we can give better recommendations to our clients. So this webinar is for you guys. Any of you team leaders, you CMOs, marketing directors who you get the value of SEO, but maybe you don't know which strategy to prioritize. If we finish a long analysis, I might be giving you guys 40 recommendations. So that's a lot to pick through and figure out which ones you want to start with. Will talked about this a little bit earlier, but in our last webinar, we focused on identifying opportunities in paid spend. So that was finding wasted spend, finding places to increase spend. So the next step there is taking those learnings. Oops, sorry guys. Taking those learnings and joining them with organic data. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna find strategies to test in organic, what types of content we need to rank in organic, and then how to prioritize each opportunity. So I have a question for everybody. How many of you currently have your paid and organic data sitting in one place right now? So we have a poll going out. I don't care if you have it in a data warehouse. I don't care if you have a spreadsheet where you're connecting it, but here's an example of a spreadsheet where I can have a paid search term. I have all the paid metrics and the organic metrics. So just want to know how many of you currently have this right now. Cool. So it looks like we have some results here. About 72% of you do not have this. So want to talk about why this is so important. And today, this is what we're going to talk about. I'm going to show you how to prioritize your work by combining data sets from these different channels. This is not what we're going to do today. We're not going to look under the hood. I'm not going to talk about transforming your data or what you have to do to connect it. We're really going to focus on strategy and finding opportunities after you do this. If you guys are more interested in this tactical information, if you want to find out how to join your data, how to move it into a visualization tool, we have tons of really great resources. We have Power BI Lab that just went live. Will, as you can see, has tons of videos walking through how to set these dashboards up and how to explore them. So definitely check these out if you're looking for tactical information. But today, all you guys need to know is that using a data viz tool, we are combining our paid and organic data in one place. Some of the questions that we're going to be able to answer are: where are you ranking for search terms that convert in paid? Who else is ranking for search terms that convert for you? Why are they ranking for them? What types of content is ranking for search terms that convert? Should you be optimizing, or do you have to create net new content in order to rank for these opportunities? Where should you be focusing your efforts? And how should you prioritize? You cannot ask these questions unless you're connecting data. You just can't. And I don't want to hear about you talking about breaking down silos or cross-divisional collaboration when your data is siloed. So this is an example here. Which conversation would you rather be having? Hey, team leader, I want to create 2 organic pages. I'm going to target 20 keywords with 3,000 monthly searches, so MSV, monthly search volume. It's going to cost us about $1,000 to create these pages. Or would you rather have this conversation? We want to create 2 organic pages. We're going to target 20 keywords with about 3,000 monthly searches. These keywords converted 20 times and paid. The CPA for these keywords is $500, and 70% of those leads were actually qualified. So when we look at the resources that cost us about $1,000, that's only 10% of what we're already spending and paid on those search terms every month. Which one of those conversations gives you what you need to prioritize? Should be a pretty easy answer there. Another thing that we want to talk about here is that search volume does not equal conversions. If you want to look at a strategy for visibility, that's fantastic, but we can't keep looking at search volume and pretending like that equals conversions. To do this, you have to have a tool that puts all of your data in one place. Organic data, paid data, analytics, moving it all into one place. And then you also need to use a tool that ensures your data is accurate. So all the data that I'm going to show you today has been pulled from different sources. So SEMrush, Ahrefs, Moz, for those of you who are more in paid, these are tools that help us get organic information, but we're putting them through a normalizer. We're using Stat for this. And so Stat has a lot more accurate ranking data. So when we put all of our different data sources into Stat, it normalizes the data. It gives us more accurate information for us to use. And that's what we then put into our data viz tool, which we connect to everything else. There's not any out-of-the-box tools that do this. You're not going to be able to go out and find a tool that just does this automatically for you. But there's data viz tools. They can handle not only the amount of data, which as Will discussed, you could be looking at millions of rows, but they can also connect things, and the visualizations make it really easy to identify outliers. We'll go through this a little later, but when you see an outlier, this can really indicate an opportunity that we want to dig into. And when we see it in a visual format, it makes it a lot easier to identify than trying to parse through a table. So for this webinar, we're going to look at finding organic opportunities for Seer. So Will, I know you brought up a lot of opportunities we had in the last webinar with paid data. So I want to take that paid data and I'm going to show you the organic opportunities that I would find. We're going to walk you through how we would find these opportunities. And at the end, we're going to pull all those opportunities together and I'll show you how I would prioritize them by looking at this connected data. So everyone, submit any questions you have as we're walking through. Erin's going to be moderating and we'll have a Q&A at the end. So, any questions you put in at any time, Erin's going to go through them. We will answer them at the end of the webinar. I think we already put this through the chat, but we're going to send a recap email with the recording. We're also going to send any links or tools. So any tools that we talk about and then any links we have, some of those resources we talked about, we'll be sending all that to you guys. So let's review where Seer's paid spend is going. I'm going to show you a few visualizations here. Up at the top, you're going to see paid metrics. So you can see our search terms, total number of search terms, impressions, clicks, conversions, and the cost for this time period. This is going to update as I change through the visualizations. I will tell you if there's something important to keep an eye on. What we're looking at here is a donut chart. So this is our total number of search terms grouped by conversion. So how many conversions each search term category has. So what does this visual tell us off the bat? 97% of our search terms have never driven a conversion. And then that makes me want to ask the question, how much are we spending on search terms that didn't convert? The answer is easy. If we select that category, we spent about $26,000 or almost $27,000. That's 50% of our total spend that went to search terms that didn't convert. So this is okay. We could have a strategy in place where we wouldn't expect conversions, could be just mainly looking at visibility, but don't you want to know how many of your search terms convert? Isn't that something that you should be aware of? Question. How many of you watch Spend by monitoring your most expensive search terms? When I look at our search terms group by cost, 77% of our search terms only spent between $0 and $20, and that was 25% of our total spend. And about search terms that did convert, so now I've removed 0 conversions. We're only looking at search terms that converted. When I look at how often they converted, 70% of our search terms only converted once. Another question. How many of you have teams or agencies who filter out search terms with less than a certain amount of clicks before analyzing? I know Will was talking about this a little earlier. 33% of our conversions only had a single click. So are you missing opportunities by filtering that out? What I'm trying to get to is you don't want to be cutting out data. You really need to use a tool that allows you to look at all of your data and then focus on sections rather than cutting it out before you pull it in. So now I want to find some opportunities to augment paid spend by looking at Seer's most expensive conversions. And when I say augment paid spend, I mean I want to find organic opportunities where maybe we have expensive search terms and I want to try to rank for them in organic. So this should look familiar. Here's a spreadsheet. We're looking at Seer paid and organic data joined on the search term. We're only looking at our search terms that converted. I'm also sorting our converting search terms by cost. So most expensive search terms at the top. So the first thing that I want to see is what do these terms have in common? And this is jumping out to me, cost and pricing terms. So I removed my conversion filter. So you can see here, we're looking at all of our search terms, but I've also filtered to look at price and cost search terms. I want to see a little bit more about how much we're spending on these total. And in total, we spent almost $7,000 on these type of search terms for 8 conversions with a CPA of $833. So questions we should ask ourselves about this. Were the leads qualified? Do we consider this a good CPA? And then how can we augment that spend with organic content? So again, spending a lot on these terms, can we rank for this in organic and maybe get some organic conversions because we know that these search terms convert in paid? So I'm going to take the same table, I'm going to sort by average monthly searches. I want to see which one of these search terms have the most MSV. And I'm also seeing here from the path, this is the page that these keywords are ranking to in organic. Most of them are ranking to the same blog post. I'm also seeing that most of these rankings, so what position the keywords are ranking in, some lower page 1, but a lot of page 2 and 3 rankings. So what this says to me is this is an opportunity for optimization. So what I want to know is who else is ranking for these keywords? This is a tree map. So looking at a competitive analysis here, we pulled all of our search terms in through stat, and we're looking at all of the competitors ranking in positions 1 through 20. So that's pages 1 and 2 for those search terms. Each box here is a domain. So you can see some domains, YouTube, Quora, Wikipedia. The domain size correlates to keyword count. So that means the bigger the box, the more keywords, again, on pages 1 and 2. So the more keywords that domain is ranking for. We're also going to look at organic result types. So some of you might be asking, why result types? And that's because they show us the types of content that are ranking. So they show us what type of content we have to create in order to rank. This should look familiar to most of you. It's a search result page. And most of you seems pretty simple, right? So paid at the top, organic at the bottom. But this isn't how the search results look all the time anymore. A lot of times you will see a page that's more like this. We have an answer box. We have a people also ask result. We have an organic result. And then we have a video carousel. And one thing that I want to point out to you when we're looking at a search result page like this is that there's only one organic result that's above the fold. So even if you were ranking in position 2, you're way down here. They can also show us user intent, so that's why we want to keep an eye on result types. Answer boxes often signal people looking for information, they're educational. People also ask in related searches, they're similar. Often the questions are a little more specific, they're a little more lower funnel than the original answer box. An image pack usually shows that people are looking for inspiration or exploration. They want to see an example of something. Video carousels. Also people looking for information, usually longer form, people who are looking for video content. PLAs and shopping ads. No surprises here, purchase or comparison intent. And then local pack. Also similar, no surprises, but the solution is often local. You cannot afford to not pay attention to these result types. If you're not paying attention to them, you could be ranking so much further down the page. And if you do pay attention to them, you have the opportunity to rank multiple times on the first page. AdWords is not going to show you this. They don't care what you're bidding on. They're not going to show you what types of content are ranking. Who is ranking is also really important. This is why this tree map here, this competitive analysis, is important. If we see a lot of results like Wikipedia or Techipedia, businessdictionary.com, that can show that the query is usually educational or informational. Here's an example of comparison intent. So Spiceworks, Capterra, PC Mag, these are a lot of results that are comparing the best of. Or here's an example where we would see shopping. So if you're looking at a tree map and you're seeing Amazon, eBay, Walmart, shopping intent is very clear. So that was just a few examples, but how do we scale this categorization? There's a really great tool called Web Shrinker. And so you can throw all of your competitors in there and they will set out what category they have. And that'll really help you get a good idea of the types of queries, the types of content that you need to create just based on who is ranking for the keywords that you're looking at. Some of you are probably pretty frustrated with me right now. I told you that I was going to help you prioritize, and I just gave you 20 more things to be conscious of. You have to look at 20 more things now to understand how to prioritize your opportunities and how to rank. But the thing is, if you use the right tools, if you use a data viz tool, you can put all of your data in one place. You can see it all on one screen, all in one dashboard, and you'll be able to know all of this at the same time. So now we're going to take this tree map. We're going to filter to price and cost search terms. Again, here I want to point out organic, PAA, answers, carousel video. These are the types of results that are ranking for those keywords. So what do the SERPs look like? Answer boxes, no surprise. But what I want to bring up is that these questions are being answered directly in the SERP, so should we keep bidding on them? So we're paying to answer this question, and when people put it in, the answer is right there. My other question is, can we create organic content to target these boxes instead? Can we augment that paid spend with organic content? Notice that this site is ranking for all three of these answer boxes. And when you dig in a little closer, they're actually ranking with the same sentence. So one sentence is ranking for all three of these answer boxes. When I dig into what their page looks like, I can see comparison charts, pretty much just giving you an overview of GA360 versus standard. And then when I want to look at our content, it's very similar. That's great because that makes me think that if we optimize it, we have a really good chance of ranking. So my first opportunity, is I want to add a sentence discussing the starting cost of GA360 to our page. When I go back to the tree map, I'm noticing Quora is the top competitor. And there's two questions that I ask myself when I see forums and communities ranking. So the first is, can we provide a better answer? A lot of times forums or communities will rank because people have been asking a question and they can't find someone to answer it. So instead they go to a forum to see if someone will help them. So first we need to know, we need to figure out what we need to know about the content so that we know if we can provide a better answer. We have to look at how their content looks. How many pages are ranking for those keywords? And how many keywords are ranking to each page? Because that can show the depth of content, how long it needs to be. So I'm drilling down in my tree map to Quora pages. So same tree map, but I'm only looking at Quora pages. So now each box is a URL. So each URL, how big they are is showing me how many keywords that URL is ranking for. I'm also going to filter to search terms that converted. So this is going to help us prioritize because I'm going to focus on the search terms that converted. We can see these 3 pages are ranking. And then I want to take a look at it. Why is it ranking? The answers are pretty short. The questions are formatted as H1. So that's one thing to think about. And so my opportunity here is to add a facts section to our page. I want to ask and answer these questions with well-formatted headers. So I want to take a cue from Quora and I want to put those questions into a header to see if they'll rank better. The second question I ask when I see forums is, can we advertise on this site? There's 2 ways to do that. You can become a part of the community or you can look into paid advertising. So if you're going to become part of the community, don't show up and think the community is going to appreciate blatant advertising. You need to put time in to understand how to provide value to them. Tableau does a really great example of this on Reddit. They just really understand the community and they offer a lot of value to them. So my thought here is that Seer team members could answer analytics related questions on Quora. So that's going to be my other opportunity that we can test. Also, paid ads. So in Quora, we can see that there's some paid ads here. And paid advertising is something you can test on a lot of forums right now. They're getting smart to how many opportunities they are offering. Some other opportunities that we should test paid advertising on Quora. So now I'm going to jump into another way of finding opportunities with the PPC and SEO analysis. This is where we're going to focus on how do we rank for search terms that convert. We're going to take this same data, so same stuff, but we're going to put it into a scatter plot. And the reason we're going to do that is because you can identify outliers. So this is something we talked about earlier. Outliers often equal opportunities. It's either something where we're doing really well and we should try to target that strategy in organic, or maybe we're not handling it in organic and we should make sure that it's something we work into our strategy. So here's our scatter plot. The bubble size is cost. Oh, sorry about that. Each bubble is a search term. So how big the bubble is cost. So how much does that search term cost us? On the y-axis, we have minimum of rank. So if something is ranking higher, it's actually going to be lower on the scatter plot. So you can see here we have position 0, position 20. So if it's lower down here, it's ranking higher. Along the x-axis, we have conversions. So the more conversions each search term has, the further to the right it's going to be. Now I want to break this visual into quadrants because this is how we identify opportunities. This is how we look at outliers. So this top left quadrant is lower conversions and lower organic rank. The top right one is higher conversions and lower organic rank. So if you see something here, you better hustle because that means we are getting a lot of paid conversions and we are not ranking well for it. This bottom left quadrant is lower conversions and higher organic rank. And then this bottom right quadrant is high conversions, high organic rank. This is something we should defend. We're doing well in both paid and organic here. So I also want to look at ranking groups because this can help us understand if we need net new content or if we just need to optimize content. So positions 1 through 10, we're on page 1, we should defend. Positions 11 through 20, we're in striking distance of page 1, so we should be optimizing. Positions 20 through 50, dig in. You might want to find out a little bit more. There could be the potential to optimize or net new content. It's very dependent on the search term. And then anything in positions 50 or more, you generally need net new content. A reminder here, we're going to look at these sections for whether we need net new or whether we need to optimize. I also want to say let's go bigger because we're looking at Seer data. We only have a handful of bubbles, so that's pretty easy. But let's talk about scaling. Here's an example of 900 search terms for a SaaS client. If we filter to branded, that narrows to 429 search terms. So that's a quick way that we can narrow our analysis. So one thing I wanted to pop out is check out these outliers. Why are we ranking below page 1 for branded terms? And so what we found is this client has different sites for different personas. And by identifying those outliers, we were able to start a discussion between their two teams about the competition between the sites and what strategies we should put into place. We can also filter to unbranded. So this narrows our search to only 449 terms, cuts it in half. So again, think about these quadrants. First priority, this one, we have high conversions and low rank, easy. So now what we can do is exclude the outliers. And what this does is it extends the chart over. It makes it easier to analyze. So again, want to really drive home why data visualization is important here for finding these opportunities. You can then focus on bubble size if you want to look at cost. So here's some examples of cost. Spent over 3,000 for 10 conversions in 3 months. That's almost 15,000 a year. If we multiply that, that'd be about 41,000 over 3 years. We're ranking position 56. So this gave us 10 conversions in this time period. If we spent $500 in copywriting to create an organic landing page, would it be worth it? It would be 4 dev hours. Would it be worth it? And this is what I would ask you if you were my client. You were willing to spend $14,000 a year on this term and paid. So is it worth the $500 for a copywriter and 4 hours for the dev work? And then what about completely untapped opportunities? This is another really great way we can use data viz. We can take the same chart and filter to rank is blank. These are search terms where we're not ranking for at all, not even position 100. So to me, this is huge untapped opportunities. Here's one where we spent $4,000 for 13 conversions in 3 months. 13 conversions. So huge opportunity here. And then we can flip that around. Are there relevant high-ranking organic keywords that we should test bidding on? So now we're going to filter to impressions is 0. And look at all these high-ranking keywords. These are all keywords that are ranking for us in positions 1 through 20. So this is a really big opportunity to test bidding on these in paid. So now I want to find some opportunities for Seer with this visual. Here's our scatter plot. Here's the first one, strategies defend. We're already ranking on page 1 for this, so pretty easy. We just want to make sure we continue ranking. Here's a strategy where we want to dig in. We had 2 conversions for the search term Google Analytics 360 Suite. We're ranking in 24. So to me, this says potentially optimize. So which page is ranking for this keyword? It looks like we have a blog post on the benefits of GA360. So now I want to look at what's ranking on page 1 for this term. I'm seeing video opportunities. So again, I'm bringing up that result type. You can see videos right at the top. There's branded content. So this is all from Google. So no surprise they're ranking. And then we have guides and comparison posts. So seeing those makes me think that we can optimize. So my opportunity here is to optimize the blog post for suite keywords. But I also want to look at what types of videos are ranking. There's a Google overview, so that's fine. But then the other 2 videos that we're ranking in that carousel are actually product reviews. So this is people just giving their take on GA360. So I think this is a prime opportunity for Seer to create a video talking about our take on the benefits of GA360. Going back to the scatter plot. Here's a net new strategy. We have a conversion for Google Tag Manager audit. We're ranking in position 57. So when I look at what page is ranking for this keyword, it's a page that's where to put analytics tracking code. So it's not really relevant to GTM audits. So we need a new page. So I want to go back to what's ranking on page 1. I'm seeing how-tos and guides, and I'm seeing service pages. So I want to look at what the how-to content looks like. I'm checking the depth of content, so I'm using a word counter, and I can see that the word counts range from 1,000 to 4,000 words a page. It's really in-depth content, easy to follow steps. There's lots of screenshots, examples of free tools, really walking people through. So I think we have an opportunity to create an in-depth guide on how to perform a GTM audit. I also want to look at what the services pages look like. The top 3 ranking pages are about 300 words a page, so much shorter. And when I look at them, they all have the specific services included in an audit listed out. So my other opportunity is creating a GTM audit service page. So I showed you some examples using a word count extension, but what if you're looking at a bunch of examples? How do you scale finding word count? Really easy to run competitor pages through Screaming Frog. And there's actually a word count in the regular internal all exports. So it'll give you the average word count. You can really identify what type of content you need to create, what depth of content. You also should consider ranking factories for your industry. So want to call this really great presentation out where Marcus Tober found a difference in how important word count is in the travel industry versus the finance industry. So you also need to take into account your industry and how important word count is for ranking. So what are our total Seer opportunities? I have 9 opportunities. We have all those cost pricing opportunities, the 2 suite opportunities, and the GTM opportunity. Questions that we should be asking ourselves to prioritize. How many paid conversions did we get from these search terms? Were the leads from paid conversions qualified? How much did we spend on those conversions? How much would we spend in a year on those search terms? So thinking long-term. What was the CPA for the leads? And what would be the total cost of resources for organic strategies? So if we wanted to go after all of these organic opportunities, what would the total cost be either in copywriting or dev hours? So here's how I'm looking at our paid metrics for these themes. The cost pricing lead quality was pretty low, but the cost was high. The suite opportunity, or the suite lead quality was high. The cost per year was in the middle. And then GTM, our lead quality was high, but our cost was really low. So I'm going to call that out. We have higher quality, higher cost. I'm going to prioritize that first. Low lead quality, I'm going to put that down at the bottom. So I'm going to prioritize that as 3. So here's how I'm going to look at it. Next, we're going to go through and just identify for each opportunity, since suite was the first, optimization is low cost, low effort. So that's what I'm going to say is the first thing that we should work on. And when we look on GTM, increasing bids on Google Tag Manager audit is super fast. We can test an increase in bids and get results very quickly. And then I want to create that audit service page. It has a higher conversion intent than the guide. So that's the next item that I'm going to create. And then lastly, for cost pricing terms, adding that sentence about the starting cost and creating a fact section, we would just be optimizing that content. So pretty low cost, pretty low effort. And then we do the testing here, advertising on Quora with paid. That would be really fast for us to get results. So I would recommend that next. So what we have here is our total prioritization using all the opportunities we found by combining our data and then prioritizing by that combination of data. We would not have been able to answer any of these questions without joining that data. And so now I want to bring it over. Oh, sorry about that. Not yet. I have a few more slides. So PPC and SEO is just the beginning here. I also want to bring up bringing your CRM data in here. So one thing that we talked about was lead quality and how you can determine lead quality. So if you have the GA360 and Salesforce integration, that's a really fast way where you could export your Google Analytics data, bring it right into your data viz tool, and you can get a better understanding of your lead quality and what pages they had visited. So which content was more important to that lead? What was the quality of that lead for when we're making these decisions? There's also more opportunities to add more data. Clearbit Reveal is a really cool tool where it takes the IP address from the industries that are your leads, and it gives you a better understanding of how big there is. So employee range, if it's a small business, an enterprise business, the industry that they're in, or their tech stack. So this can be really cool when you're looking at certain personas. So trying to understand what types of content you should create. Maybe you have a focus on small businesses. Maybe you're trying to expand to focus on agencies. So really what we want to bring as the final question here is, are you asking your team members and your agencies to give you what you need to prioritize? And really what you need is the ability to see the return on investment and whether the cost that you're going to spend on resources is going to, end up being conversions. So now I'm going to stop my share and kick it back over to Will.
All right. Let me pick this up. Great freaking job. That was awesome, Christina. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right. So now let me put this in presenter mode, and I think we'll be good to go. Hoping so. Up. For some reason, I'm a little bit off. There we go. All right. So the future. Where are we going with this, I think, is we just showed you the process that we've been undergoing for the last year and a half, distilled into a half hour or 40 minutes of a lot of people's work and a lot of time. But let me show you the thing that has me most excited about the future that we see. So it's what I consider to be almost like data influenced rapid hypothesis testing. So the idea of your clients or your managers bringing to you, like, what should we do about voice? I'm hearing about it everywhere, and Google says this, and and ComScore says that, and I'm trying to make sure that as an organization, when you have all this data, as helpful as it is to look at it for one client, it's really helpful when you can see trends across clients. I can't tell you the amount of times I've looked at one client set of data or read something that Google said, ran off and did it, and invested time and resources just to find out that it wasn't going to impact my client, which is a waste of their time and their resources. So here's a great example of what I consider to be the farce of voice search. Literally, this is a report from ComScore that says in about 8 months, we're all going to be doing 50% of our searches on voice. This came out a few years ago, and this was the prediction. And the problem is predictions like these are not helpful, because what they're not saying is, are certain industries more likely to have this many voice searches? Or it's not, the search landscape is so complex and so fragmented from how people search, it's really hard just to believe this on a blanket level. However, clients they go out to conferences, or your managers go out to conferences, and they hear about stats like that from Google and these other companies, and they come back and say, well, what are we going to do? Now, one quick fact is that Google right now does not give us the difference between which queries were done on voice and which ones were done via someone typing something in. So therefore, when you see these metrics that say 50% from ComScore, or I believe Google's come out and said 30% are going to be voice searches, it's like, well, then when am I going to get that data to tell me which of these queries are voice? Because until then, how do I know you just don't want to sell more Google mini home devices, right? All right, so I use OK Google misfires. So this is where someone said, OK Google, and it came through in the actual query. And what you can not really see here, because it's blurred out, is you can see, whoops, let me go back, that we have different clients coming out of our data warehouse. So now what I can do is I can look at different clients in different industries across the board to see who has the highest level of susceptibility to voice queries. So now I can say when a client says, what do you think we should do about voice? I can literally see an analysis across, 60, 70 clients, or however many we have in our data warehouse, and say, hey, you know what? We see it as a very low propensity for you to have these searches as a percentage of your overall search. We see your industry as being high or low, and we see whether or not you are actually getting conversions on keywords from paid. Paid only is what we have here. Where are you converting or not from these kind of OK Google misfires? And to me, that's a much more robust conversation to have with your client, and that's the future of where we're trying to go. So now if I can do this for OK Google, because I have it all stored into a BigQuery data warehouse, you start being able to say, well, what about other types of words? When people use cheap or free or what or how, or Spanish words, be careful of those showing up in your accounts. And now we're able to see those trends and the analyses across clients. So I think you start off doing this in one-offs like we're talking about today, but eventually we're going to graduate into what I would consider to be the data warehousing of all these different interesting data points to make better assessments for our clients. Because the last thing that I want to see us do as a company going forward is when a client says to us, what should we do about voice? Before we were able to put all this data into a data warehouse and ask these questions quickly, we would probably send out something like this. It was the best research we had. We'd send out this, we would send out things to our clients that came from Google. And now we get to say, you know what, given what we see, we don't see your industry as being one that fits the propensity to have a lot of voice searches based on Google misfires. Or, yeah, you had some of those search terms showed up, but they're a really small percentage of your overall search relative to everyone else that we have in our data data warehouse. Or, yeah, you might be the 5th highest client, but none of those words seem to really convert for you. It's just a more robust conversation to have. So it really doesn't matter what the question is. I want to be able to offer better answers, whether it's voice or page speed or word count or mobile first. The idea is like we should never be answering these questions with a I think, I believe, or I read. I would much rather say, what data do I need? Oh, if I want to know if page speed is affecting X, Y, or Z, then let me pull the page speed for all, 500 million unique URLs that we have, and to see where do we find correlations across our data warehouse, and in what industries do we find the highest sensitivity to page speed, versus maybe in other industries you can get away with a slower loading page. That kind of insight helps you to keep your client from spending a bunch of money on improving page speed, which has a bunch of other reasons other than search. But if you say, hey, well, we should do it because Google said yada, 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 and then your client goes, runs out, does all that work, improves the page speed, and the rankings never increase and the conversions never increase, then you ultimately have wasted some of their resources and time, and you've also kind of taken a little bit of damage to your reputation next time you tell your client you think that they should do something. So now what I want to do is turn it over to Aaron to kind of fire up the Q&A, and then Christina and I will do our best to answer your questions. I thank you so much. Go ahead and take it over from here. I'll stop my share.
Awesome. Thanks, Will and Christina. Great stuff. So to kick it off here, Christina, we have a viewer that would like to know, what attribution model are you using for your conversion data that you reference throughout your presentation. Cool. And so how do you see if these aren't excellent opportunity today, hold true in a few weeks from now, or are there real-time data aggregator options?
I love that question. So I would say there's a few different options. So if we were using something like the data warehouse, that has more real-time data. But for a lot of ad hoc analyses, where we are moving at Seer is we are creating templates. So we are building these analyses out for our team members where they can hook up their client data and spend their time on analysis. So let's say I did an analysis for you 6 months ago and we wanted to do a new one. It would be relatively simple for me to update with new data. So download the new data, upload it into the same exact dashboard, and it would give me those updated metrics.
Awesome.
And Aaron,
go ahead, Will.
And I think so. Christina's been working a lot on the templateization, and the side that I'm working on is answering out of the data warehouse. And I think that anybody on this call is you're going to go through a progression. It is the progression we went through. I used to log into AdWords and download CSVs and then log into my ranking tool and upload all the search terms and then join them together. And that was very manual, right? But that's where you're going to have to start. And then eventually, thank God, you know, a bunch of team members, Christina Blake and Jordan Strauss and others came along and said, hey, we're learning how to parameterize some of these things and templatize some of these things. So you can just download the data and upload your, and then your client visuals will change. And then our future state is that we just hit the refresh button in our browser and we're using BigQuery, and because we're a Google, we use Google for our emails, you can actually create a mechanism that says which team members have access to which clients. So then when they go to log in to BigQuery, they can only see those visuals automatically created for their clients. And if they wanted it every day, for instance, or every week or every month, they just hit refresh and that's it. And then it updates with them and then they're right into having a robust conversation with their clients. And that's really what the future of where we're going to hopefully be able to get to in the next 6 to 8 months.
Awesome. Great to hear. Thank you for jumping in with that. So next question we have is about normalizing rankings. So this viewer would like to know, it'd be interesting to provide a resource on how you normalize rankings from SEMrush to Stat, for instance, on an ongoing basis. So part of just clarifying is, I mean, every month rankings change. So how do you update and normalize your organic ranking data? Maybe an idea for future blog posts in our Power BI lab was also a suggestion within that question.
So that's a good question. I would say there's 2 use cases where we use Stat at Seer. One is ongoing rank tracking. So for our clients, we always have Stat projects where we are tracking ongoing rankings, like what you were saying, day to day, we want to keep an eye. When we are doing these major analyses, we often upload a sandbox. So what we will do is we will download data from multiple sources. So one example would be downloading search terms from Ahrefs and SEMrush and Moz and AdWords, and putting them into Stat and running it long enough where we can get that data back, just long enough to do that analysis. But we do run it through Stat because we want to normalize. If anyone's ever done a comparison, I know for a while I was working on trying to understand the difference in rankings between those tools. They vary. So trying to make sure we're normalizing that data is something that we always do for these major analyses. But usually we'll just do it during that sandbox, download it, and then use that data for the analysis. And then if we need to update it, that goes back to the previous question, we would run an updated sandbox. So in 6 months from now, if we needed to look at that data again and understand how the rankings have changed, we would run it again, hook up the new data to our dashboard and analyze that way.
Ooh, Will, you have anything to add on there?
No, Christina nailed that one. That was perfect.
Awesome. So Will, going to switch it over to you. These questions came in during your voice search section. So first one is just, can you kind of walk through a little bit of what that OK Google misfire means? So I think it's about the experience of like how it happens.
Got it. You know what, there's 2 things. Because I answered a question earlier related to the difference between search terms and keywords. So just remind me to go back to that after this one, because we're very intentional about those words being different because of the many mistakes we've made over the months and months and months of conflating those 2. But for this one, when I say OK Google misfire, what I mean is typically when I say OK Google into my phone or my device, I get an answer. sometimes if like somebody like double speaks or they say something incorrect in the way that they're saying it, it ends up being a search query. And then if I can pull all the impressions out of our data warehouse for every client that has an impression on a word where the OK Google came through as a search impression, then I get data on impressions, clicks, and whatnot when it comes through. The only, the hole in that approach is I do not know what the propensity for a misfire is. So therefore, when I talk to clients, I'll say, if it's 1 in 10 and you have a 0.04, then that means that's a 0.4% of all your search is voice. If we think 1 in 100 is a misfire, then it's this. If it's 1 in 1,000, we think it's this. And then we have to kind of give a good, better, best assumption there because we don't get that data anywhere else.
Awesome. And then let's roll that right into the question you mentioned. So what is the difference between search terms and keywords?
All right, I'm going to butcher this for you PPC people, but just earmuffs. In AdWords, you need to understand the difference between search term and keyword. Anywhere else we talk about rankings, we typically talk about keyword rankings, keyword rankings, keyword rankings. Organic is fine. It's when you're in paid that a keyword could be Nike Air Max, okay? That's the keyword that I'm bidding on. That could match to thousands and thousands of unique search terms. So the keyword Nike Air Max is only one keyword, but it could be matching to Nike Air Max size 13, Nike Air Max for boys, red Nike Air Max, etc. And all those are different search terms that are matching that keyword.
I have a quick note. I think the way that I like to explain it, if I can jump in, is a search term is what people are actually typing. So that's what they're typing in. That's the query that they're making. So when we try to equate paid, we equate a paid search term to organic keyword because an organic keyword is what people are actually typing in. You know, a paid search term or a paid keyword is kind of a way to tag or categorize your search terms.
Awesome. Thank you both. And now we have about 7 minutes left. Will, this one also came in during the voice search section. So have you implemented the strategy that came from that data? If so, would you be willing to share the results or you know, will you be sharing the results in the future?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. Obviously, our client's data is their data. It's private. So sometimes you cannot, you know, blur out all the things. Like sometimes the value is in the things that you would have to blur out. So what we will do is we will do our best. So you notice we use our own data, so we don't have to blur anything out. So I spent, you know, $60,000 to advertise or whatever that number was to advertise our GA360 process. And then you can actually see our data. So we do talk about, like the 21 Savage example is an example. I can't give this client specifics, but I can say like, hey, here's an example of a search phrase that was spending a lot of money. We joined the organic data to the paid data, found out that there was a music video showing up in the #1 spot for this word, spending a lot of money, and that's how we ended up negating that and saving a lot of money for the client. A lot of our focus so far has been on creating more content. So like, how do we find opportunities and prioritize the ways to create content for our clients, and how to save them money on inefficiencies in paid have been the two big examples we've been showing over and over again.
Awesome, thank you. And the viewer jumped in and clarified that they meant with Seer's specific data. So yes.
All day, our data is your data. That's how you're gonna learn.
For sure. So we have about 5 minutes left. I'm gonna throw a fun one into the mix. Will, someone wants to know what your shirt means.
So these are different types of joins between data, which I didn't know anything about joins until I started on this journey. And that's one thing I do want to remind everybody about is 18 to 24 months ago, I did not know what Power BI was. I did not know what an inner versus an outer versus a left or a right join was. I didn't even know what a join was. I didn't know the difference between a keyword and a search term. Well, I did, but not really. I wasn't good at it. So like all this stuff is learnable if you take the time. So yes, I decided to create a shirt to showcase my inner nerdiness, and it is a bunch of joins.
Cool. Thank you for that. We have time for about 2 more questions. This next one is pretty paid specific. Google recently advised that ad positioning will not be a metric that they will report sometime this year. So your thoughts on that trend? And I can jump in and just let everybody know we do have a blog post live on our site right now that addresses this. So go to seerinteractive.com/blog and you should be able to find our post on that. And I can also include it in the follow-up email we will send out after this webinar. So Will, Christina, do you have anything you want to add on to that?
Not really, Christina. I mean, Christina, do you have anything? I got one quick thing.
No, I think the blog post is a pretty great explanation. I definitely recommend people check it out.
We're not really using position right now. What I will tell you that's been freaking fun, this is a secret for those of you that stuck on to the Q&A, is to look at your click-through rate by and some of your paid metrics based on where a competitor ranks who's consistently above you. So we find it very fun to look at when Amazon ranks in position 1 or 2, organically, how that affects your paid data. And then when Amazon drops out of 1 or 2, when do you see an uptick in some of your paid data? So then we're able to monitor to that kind of real-time thing. We're able to monitor that when Amazon drops into position X for this client, we know that that's a great time to start bidding again, because we know that we get extreme leverage on that bid on every dollar we put in when Amazon's in a certain position. So the way we have looked at position so far has been completely around how to use organic positioning to better understand how organic when a big competitor shows up above you influences your paid data.
Awesome. Thank you, Will. So we have about 3 minutes left. This last one's more of a fun story, and then also just asking for a recommendation. So one of our attendees said, we've helped a client with your method and found that they spent $300,000 on keywords that generated 0 conversions from AdWords. Now they're asking if they should take all of that $300,000 and invest it in SEO. What do you think?
I'll jump in with a few things, and then maybe Will, you can jump in. So I would hate to move all of that money. If you were using that methodology, you should have also found search terms that were performing really well. And so to me, that's an opportunity where we could be moving that money into a place where it performs better. However, I do love, just because I am an SEO account manager, I do find wasted spend. I find an opportunity to create something in organic. I do love letting clients know that, hey, I freed up X amount of dollars. Could we use that X amount of dollars to create a page, and I could try to get some of those conversions in organic?
Will, you got less than 1 minute if you want to throw anything on there. And for everybody else that has questions in here, I'm going to put them in a Google Sheet and send answers after the webinar later today.
So the real big reason why I was shaking my head so much is when you actually just dig into data day in and day out, you see how many search terms converted only one time all year, which means at some point all year that thing was a freaking donut, right? 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, and then one day it got like 1 impression and converted. And if that conversion was worth all that spend, it kind of is okay. I think the bigger thing that Christina was showing are things like when are you targeting search terms that by themselves are disqualifiers, that you're like, this word doesn't make sense for my business, and I'm of course getting no conversions because it makes no sense for my business. Let me get rid of those. So when I see 21 Savage bank account, I'm like, yes, no good. But I don't want to start negating words that have 0 conversions, because the long tail's gotten so long that you would probably do a net negative to the account by just removing all those 0 converting words.
Yeah, and just to jump on, I think we actually just had a Seer Solves It video go up where I was going through finding wasted spend and how you can qualify whether it was a search term you should negate. So just because something didn't convert doesn't mean it's invaluable, but if we are seeing that that search term doesn't make sense, if we're bidding on something that isn't relevant, we want to be able to check it and then negate that term. So we have that up on the Seer YouTube.
And that video will also go out in the follow-up email later today. Thank you for everybody who hung out through the Q&A. Thanks for all your great questions, and we'll see you on the next webinar.